Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darcie Brohman, and I'm here to confess something that I suspect many of you to be guilty of as well. I have spent my whole life defining success on my achievements, academics, leadership positions, and athletics. I was a perfectionist to the point that I would immerse myself in my work, often losing myself along the way. However, over the last year, I have found myself. And to my surprise, I can only thank my biggest fear: failure. That being said, my story started with success. It was 2019, and I had just made Team Canada's U16 field hockey team, an opportunity I was beyond grateful for. To this day, I can distinctively remember the exhilarating feeling of pride and accomplishment as I stepped onto the field for my first ever international match. It was a feeling that I never wanted to end. In the following years, I spent countless hours training, sacrificing time with friends and family, and pushing myself to my mental and physical limits to ensure I stayed on the team, making the team again in the following years for U16 and U18, until one year, last year, I was cut. I was devastated. As I read the team list, finally acknowledging after several minutes of scanning and rescanning that my name was indeed not there, I finally lost hope, and my heart shattered. As I stared at where I imagined my name would have been, I began to replay the last year in my mind, bypassing my successes and instead reliving all of my failures that had led up to this moment, critiquing every ball I had mistrapped, every play I had gotten beaten in, every shot I had just missed. Now, when I looked down on the list, I no longer just saw the empty space where I imagined my name would have been. I saw an empty space where I imagined someone would have put my name if I would have been good enough, if I would have been worthy, if I wasn't such a failure. But you know what they say in that cheesy quote? It doesn't matter how hard you fall, it's how you get back up. This has to be where the tide turns, where my success story starts, right? Wrong. Unlike every sports movie of all time and every inspirational TED Talker to ever exist, I did not begin to train harder, using my failure to ignite a spark within me. Nor did I get my own dramatic montage. I know, disappointing. Instead, I let the failure consume me. I worried about what would happen if others found out I was cut. I was afraid to be seen as a failure or not good enough in the eyes of my peers and family. To me, field hockey and the success it brought me, although shallow, was a large part of my identity. If people found out I had failed at the one thing I was known for being good at, what would my peers see when they looked at me? What would you see when you looked at me? Would my family see me as a disappointment after all of the time, energy, and money they had invested into my development as a player? And most importantly, if I wasn't on Team Canada anymore, how could my grandma brag to all her old lady friends about me? This fear consumed me and led me into a spiral of denial and isolation. I neglected to tell my friends and extended family that I had been cut, telling them very believable cover-ups like there had been a delay in the list coming out, or our boarding house dog Wallace, much like he ate my math homework, ate my computer and I couldn't check. However, in all seriousness, what I failed to realize was that by not telling my friends what had happened, I was also neglecting to tell them what I was going through. And as the days dragged and turned into weeks, I found myself not only fearing what others would think of me, but also beginning to grow more fearful about what I was beginning to think of myself. I felt like I had nothing else to be proud of or identify myself with. I felt like a complete failure. Everything I based my success on could be taken away in an instant, and all of the work I put in would mean nothing. Maybe, instead, if I just withdrew myself, I wouldn't fail anymore. Because I couldn't fail anymore if I wasn't trying to succeed. With this adopted mindset, I began to lose motivation in field hockey, in school, and in my leadership positions. And things that I once loved doing began to feel like chores. All because I felt like it didn't matter anymore. Maybe it never did matter. To make everything worse, I had told no one besides my immediate family who were 3 hours away, and I felt so alone. Struggling is never easy, but struggling alone is so much harder. But this is where my story turns. A pivotal choice, a brave choice, and one of the hardest things I have ever done, yet something I recommend to anyone out there who is struggling. And that was to admit I was not okay and reach out for help. "Tell me about yourself, Darcie," was the first question I was asked. And for what seemed like the easiest question ever constructed in the entire universe, my mind went blank. I no longer could say I was a national level athlete, and I was beginning to feel like all my other accomplishments maybe didn't mean anything either. And I felt inadequate and generic, sharing that my favorite color was blue and I was 16 years old. Who was I besides my accomplishments? Who was I deep down? I was at a loss for words, for one of the first times in my life. So instead, I reframed the question. Who do I want to be? When someone asks me who I am, what do I want to answer with? I went a step even further. When my life is over and people are writing my obituary, attending my celebration of life, what do I want them to say about me? It was in this moment that I realized that it wouldn't matter to me as much if they mentioned that I was a student ambassador, or an honor roll student, unless it was a representation of something else. Instead, I cared more about what they said about my character, how I impacted the world and others around me. I wanted to be remembered, to have been known as a selfless, empathetic, and kind-hearted person. Over the next few months, I began challenging myself to shift my definition of success from medals hanging in my bedroom to my character and actions. I focused on acknowledging the goodness of my existing self and intentionally challenging myself to source my sense of achievement and happiness from it. Every time I did something good, even something small, like smiling at strangers I passed in the hall or opening the door for someone else, I praised myself. This naturally developed a desire within me to make the lives of others a little brighter around me each and every day. And something that had started so small grew. I began to join volunteer initiatives and activities that I had once loved and thought I needed to sacrifice for sport. I joined new organizations that I was passionate about, ones that advocated for and supported marginalized communities and social justice causes. Not only did helping others feel good, but it helped build a world in which I wanted to live in, a small community of optimism, gratitude, and love. I was no longer fueling my drive and happiness on cheap gold-colored stars on test papers and words of affirmation from others. Instead, I was sourcing that validation, that happiness, from within. And although I felt like I had no accomplishments on paper, I had never been so happy and so proud of myself in my entire life. So later that year, when I was placed back onto the Canadian team, I was excited. When I scored the first goal for Canada, it felt good. But when the tour was over and I landed in Toronto, that exhilarating feeling that I had once again received from playing for my country, scoring for my country, was fading, and was something that I no longer felt needed to be obsessively chased and relied on, as it was truly incomparable to the fulfillment I had felt over the past few months of long-term happiness from my friends, my family, and most importantly, myself. Thankfully, as a result of all of this, I was equipped to face other inevitable failures in my life, which came in handy a few months later when I received disappointing news regarding a leadership position, or to rephrase, the lack thereof. I had failed at something I had wanted and tried for, and yes, I was bummed, but I was not crushed, because I had found a sustainable sense of inner happiness that could not be taken away at the first sign of failure. The personal growth I achieved from my biggest failure made me question if there was a cheesy quote that was true after all. When one door closes, another one opens. Or, at least in my case, a window can be propped open and crawled out of to teach you something about how unreliable doors are, or that maybe you never even needed a door in the first place. So why am I telling you this? I want you to challenge the structural integrity of your gateway to success. Happiness that is dependent on others can be taken away from us so fast. We can fail at something in an instant. Whether it's athletics, being cut from a sports team, academics, being rejected from a university, failing a test, or being denied a leadership position, something that you have worked so hard for might just come crumbling down. So turn the tide. Place the control in your hands. By finding happiness in what you can control, not only will you begin to stress less about others' perception of you and gain a newfound sense of authenticity, but you will develop a long-lasting sense of joy that travels with you through both your successes and failures. Joy that no one can take away from you. So yes, be ambitious, or as Taylor Swift would say, be fearless, chase your wildest dreams. Just do not place all of your self-worth in your accomplishments, as that is where you put yourself at risk. Because as the year comes to a close and Senior 2s receive rejections from universities, Senior 1s are denied from Senior 2 leadership positions for next year, AP exams are flunked, spring sports games are lost, top 6 averages become not enough, and tears are inevitably shed, this might matter to you. So take a moment to remind yourself that you are so much more than your failures, as much as you are so much more than a list of achievements on a resume or trophies collecting dust on a shelf. You are a person, a mosaic with pieces comprised of how you interact with others, your values, your memories, your experiences, and your most inner hopes and dreams. So strive to be the best version of your truest self each and every day, for yourself. Or as my parents would say, try to be a little better than the person you were yesterday, and you will find a sense of success and happiness that you can carry with you for the rest of your life. Thank you. Now please join me in singing hymn number 352, Amazing Grace.